Good afternoon. My name is Rita Lerner, and I am honored to join you today as a member of the Board of Trustees of the Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial to the Holocaust. I am also the daughter of 2 Holocaust survivors. My mother, Henny Dermashkin Gurko, was a survivor of the Vilna Ghetto and Dachau. My father, Simon Gurko, survived in Siberia. I have been part of this commemoration for over 36 years and have seen it grow to include the active participation of the 3rd generation and now the 4th generation. Together, we honor the memory of all survivors who have passed away, leaving us to carry on their great legacy. The Museum of Jewish Heritage will always be in the forefront of this important observance. On behalf of the museum and its partner organizations, we are grateful that you are joining us today. We also welcome our community members via live stream from homes all over the world. Together, we will honor our Kedoshim who perished in the Holocaust. Because of the solemnity of this event, please silence your cell phones and refrain from applause. Remember, we are here to honor the memory of the 6 million Jews murdered during the Holocaust. We ask that you take a moment to look at the exit nearest you. In an emergency, walk to these exits in an orderly manner. Before our program begins, let me thank the staff of the Museum of Jewish Heritage and Temple Emanu-El for their efforts in organizing this event. Now, please rise for the national anthems. Cantor Mira Davis, assistant cantor at Park Avenue Synagogue, will lead us in the Star-Spangled Banner and Hatikvah. Roman Elliott will lead us on the keyboard.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight
Please welcome Rabbi of the Congregation Emanu-El of the City of New York, Rabbi Amy B. Ehrlich.
Makor HaChaim, creator of life and all blessings, we stand before you in community bound together by our faith, by pain and loss and sacred memories, and our responsibility to honor those who perished and to carry their stories and lessons forward. We are ever and always their witnesses to the evils of prejudice and hatred. We are called to remember. When Europe was overcome by authoritarianism, this land of liberty and justice for all was a new home where Jews could flourish and rebuild lives that had been torn. Democracy made it possible. Yet now in our own nation, we are deeply concerned. When hatred takes hold of the heart, we know what happens. When in this nation of immigrants, individuals cry out and no one hears their cry, we know that too. When the oldest hatred is weaponized, we know how that poisons society and endangers tolerance. May the lessons of what these precious souls endured give us the courage to guard the foundations of liberty. Bless all who work for righteousness and truth. We also invoke your blessing upon the sacred work of the Museum of Jewish Heritage and its important messages of education and memory, tolerance and responsibility. May we ever commit ourselves to the memory of the 6 million Kadoshim, to honoring the survivors who inspire us still, and to the children, grandchildren, and all who are yet to come after them, to bring healing, understanding, and justice to the world. Be with us, O God, and strengthen us. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel. V'imru, amen. May the one who makes peace in the heavens bring peace upon us, upon all Israel and all the world, and let us say together, amen.
Please welcome President and CEO of the Museum of Jewish Heritage, Jack Klieger.
I'm sorry it took me a long time to get up here, but it won't take as long for me to get down there. Thank you, Rabbi Ehrlich, and thank you to all for attending today. I'm Jack Klieger, President and CEO of the Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial to the Holocaust. Thank you, Rita Lerner and Ann Oster, who have co-chaired this event since its inception. Thank you to the temple, its team. Thank you, Rabbi Ehrlich. Thank you to Rabbi Davidson, Mark Rotlinger, and all of the people who worked so hard on this event with us for so many years. Thank you to the dedicated staff at our museum, especially Sydney Yeager, Isabel Molina, Maureen Masters, Sophia Blitzer, and Josh Mack, and all the other volunteers who have worked tirelessly on this event. And a big thank you to producer Bruce Roberts and his team for producing this event so well over the years. And let me also welcome the many board members, trustees who are here today, as well as the political luminaries who continue to join us on a regular basis. We greatly appreciate your participation and attendance. The annual gathering is the museum's longest-standing event, commemorating the 6 million that we lost and those who survived. I'd like to welcome so many survivors and their families who are here today. If you are a survivor and are able to, please rise so that we can recognize you and take all the time you want, or if you want to just wave, but please rise. You honor us by your presence. We're dedicated to teaching future generations, and we make a solemn pledge to the survivors that there will always be a place in New York where their grandchildren's grandchildren can come and learn and teach the lessons of the Holocaust. Today we have many members of the second, third, and fourth generations here. And I'd like to ask all of those people who are here, if you're a member of the 2Gs, 3Gs, or 4Gs, please rise as well so that we can recognize you. This is the part I really love seeing. Thank you. Thank you for all you do, and thank you for all you will continue to do. Yom HaShoah is observed on the anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. One of the leaders of that uprising was Emanu-El Ringelblum. He was determined to provide an accurate record of events taking place in German-occupied Poland while the ghetto existed. He and his group, called Einik Shabbos, created an archive documenting life in the ghetto during the Holocaust. This archive was buried underground, and after the war, most of it was recovered. I'm very proud that this September, the Einik Shabbos archives will be on view in an exhibit at the Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial to the Holocaust. First time for many of those objects that have come out of Poland. But there was a question Ringelblum also asked that will always stay with me. Who will remember us? Who will write our history? Today, we remember them. We commemorate the 6 million. Today, we honor those who survived and helped rebuild the Jewish people. And today, we fulfill our commitment to never forget. Now I'd like to introduce Chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Museum of Jewish Heritage, Dan Loeb.
Just to see all the survivors stand, and then in particular seeing the children and descendants of the survivors standing, reminded me of a meeting I had with Rabbi Lau, the chief rabbi of Israel. And I was fortunate enough to meet him. He, as most of you know, was a survivor of Buchenwald, went to Israel as a 7-year-old child, not knowing anything, eventually became chief rabbi of Israel. When we met with him, he was very proud about his 62 grandchildren, and he put his hand in his fist and he said, "That is my revenge." So it's wonderful to see all the survivors and their descendants. It's really an honor to be here among the elected officials, fellow Jews, but especially among you, the survivors and your families. Each story of survival is remarkable, and as chairman of the Museum of Heritage, a memorial to the Holocaust, your stories will always survive and will always be told. Today, we're also reminded that, unfortunately, it isn't just the Holocaust, but there have been many other horrors towards Jews. Of October 7th, the Tree of Life, countless assaults and other murders, and a terrible surge of anti-Semitism around the world. So it's very important for us to remember this so that we make sure that these things can be addressed and curtailed. But for Jews in general, remembering the Holocaust is very important, but remembering in general is very important to us. Last week we had Pesach celebrations where we remember the Exodus. Purim reminds us of the evil of Haman, and Esther's role in fighting that back. And I'll just close by talking about the fact that Jews have always been treated unjustly, always been attacked for whatever reason. And when Esther was told that the Jews would survive, and we will survive, and we will prosper and thrive, but the question that she was asked was, how will you be remembered in your fight against this? So I think everybody here is playing a role in that. And as chairman of the board, not only will we tell and continue to tell the story of the Holocaust, but we'll continue to tell all the stories of the Jewish people and our great heritage. Thank you very much.
Please welcome the Hazamir International Jewish Teen Choir, conducted and founded by Matthew Lazar with soloist Abram Foster. They will now sing Yagunt hymn. Translated lyrics can be seen in your program.
Unser Lied ist voll mit Treue, Drest ist unser Muntergang. Trotz der Säune wacht beim Teuer, stürmt Jugend mit Gesang. Weil jung ist jeder, wer es will, nur Joren haben kennbadeit. Alte kennen euch sein Kinder, von einer nahe, freier Zeit.
Jung ist jeder, wer es will, nur Joren haben kennbadeit. Alte kennen euch sein Kinder, von einer nahe, freier Zeit. Jugend geht vor uns, Jugend geht vor uns, Jugend geht vor uns,
Wer es folgt, auf Flecken, wer mit Restkeit stört sein Fuß, bringt die Jugend jemand gegen, voll im Ghetto Agerus. Jung ist jeder, wer es will, nur Joren haben kennbadeit. Alte kennen euch sein Kinder, von der nahe, freie Zeit. eine neue, freie Zeit.
Thank you, Hazamir Choir. I am honored to recognize our significant and continuing partnership with several dignitaries here today. We are so pleased to welcome them all. We are honored the Deputy Consul General of Israel, Tzach Sar, has joined us today. Please welcome him.
Survivors, the team of Temple Emanu-El, Rabbi Davidson, team of the Museum of Jewish Heritage, council speaker, congressman, controller, council member, board president, dignitaries, friends. On Yom HaShoah, we come together to remember. We remember the 6 million Jews who were murdered, lives, families, entire world erased. We remember the survivors who carried loss beyond words and chose still to rebuild. You're here with us today. Before I begin my remarks, Consul General Ambassador Ophir Akunis has asked me to share a message from him. I apologize I couldn't be here with you all in person like the last 2 years, but I'm honored to share a few words. My friends, today we remember the cruelest crimes against humanity, a crime that was carried out systematically by a group of people whose ideology was extreme and vicious, a crime based on pure hatred. Just as we see today, then there were countries, organizations, and leaders who stood silent in the face of evil. They stood silent when the Nazis took power and spread their blood libels. But my friends, these words turned into action. First, they boycotted Jewish businesses, then they burned books, then they burned down synagogues, and lastly, they burned people. Unfortunately, history is repeating itself. We're seeing a rise in anti-Semitism and baseless hatred becoming the norm. This again did not come out of nowhere, but out of a historical obsession with destroying the Jewish people. We can see it clearly happening today on the world stage once again. The Iranian Ayatollahs and their proxies are just the latest examples of this. The Ayatollahs have spent the last 49 years saying loud and clear, death to America, death to Israel. And we must open our eyes and ears and understand that when a fascist regime says it wants to destroy us, we must believe it. The Third Reich said it and did it then, and the Ayatollahs have said it and tried to do it now. But my friends, we in this room today must continue to stand united against baseless hatred and call it out no matter when or where before this is too late. We're a strong and resilient nation that has gone through some of the most terrible times, but we are a united nation, one that continues to show the entire world that we are not going anywhere, and we will remain united as one proud nation. And I want to reiterate Ambassador Akunis' messages, because remembrance is not only about the past, it's a responsibility in the present. Because what we remember today did not begin with gas chambers, it began with words, with ideas. with a slow, persistent dehumanization of Jews, turning people into symbols, into conspiracies, into something less than human. And that is why this day speaks with urgency to our time. We are witnessing once again the normalization of anti-Semitism, not only in its old forms, but also in the newer forms that attempt to disguise or maybe justify the same hatred. We see efforts to separate the Jewish people from the Jewish state, to claim that hostility toward Israel has nothing to do with hostility towards Jews, but history and reality tell a different story. The attempt to draw an artificial line between the state of Israel and the Jewish people is not a neutral argument. It is part of a broader effort to isolate, delegitimize, and ultimately endanger both. And the security of Israel and the security of Jews around the world are deeply and inseparably connected. And when one is threatened, the other feels it immediately and often very, very painfully. And we've seen it clearly in recent events. Anti-Semitism today is amplified by organized campaign, by propaganda, by dis and misinformation, by influence operations that poison public discourse and blur the line between criticism and incitement. And we have learned at an unbearable cost that silence is not neutrality. Silence is permission. Anti-Semitism is not only a threat to Jewish communities. It is a warning sign for the health of any society. A force that corrodes democratic values ultimately turns against other vulnerable groups. So today, remembrance must lead to responsibility. Responsibility to speak, to challenge lies and distortion, to refuse the acts of and language of dehumanizations of Israelis or Jews, wherever they appears. A responsibility to stand together across communities, across differences, and to reject hatred in all its forms. And also a responsibility inward, to be proud of who we are, of our identity, our history, our diversity as people. Our unity does not come from uniformity. It comes from a shared story, a shared fate, and a shared commitment to one another. And on this day, we remember the darkest chapter in our history. And we commit not only to remember, but to act, to stand united, to stand proud, and to ensure that hatred is never left unanswered. Thank you.
Please welcome Fred Schoenfeld, a survivor of the Holocaust, to address us today.
Good afternoon. My name is Fred Schoenfeld, and I stand before you not only as a survivor, but as someone who carries the memory of many who are no longer here to speak. On this day, Yom HaShoah, we come together to remember. But remembrance is not only about looking back. It is all about holding on to the voices, the lives, and the humanity that the Holocaust tried to erase. I was once a child in a world that felt ordinary. I was a young child in Slovakia when the war began. I had a family, routines, small joys. And then, step by step, that world disappeared. Not all at once, but gradually, deliberately. Rights were taken. Neighbors turned away. Fear became part of daily life. My grandfather was sent to Auschwitz. I remember the last time I saw him. My parents and I survived in hiding, eventually fleeing to the Tatra Mountains, where we stayed until liberation. There are moments I could describe to you, moments of loss, of hunger, of fear. But what stays with me the most, even now, are not only the horrors, but the fragments of humanity that endured in spite of them. A shared piece of bread, a whispered world of comfort, the determination to survive one more day. Survival was not just about staying alive. It was about holding on to a sense of self in a world that was trying to strip that away. After the war, there was no returning to what had been. The people, the communities, the entire worlds we knew, they were gone. And yet, we were asked to rebuild, to begin again, both as individuals and as the global Jewish community. In fact, one of the most important rebuilding projects was the State of Israel, which is now a thriving home of the Jewish people. In fact, if Israel had existed just 10 years earlier, the Jews of Europe could likely have been saved. For many years, survivors carried these stories quietly, some out of pain, some out of the belief that the world might not understand or might not want to listen. But today, I speak because memory matters. I speak for my family, for my community, for the millions whose lives were cut short. I speak because each time a story is shared, something is restored. And I speak to you, especially to the younger generations, because remembrance now lives in your hands. You do not need to have lived through the Holocaust to carry a memory forward. You do that by listening and learning, by asking questions, by refusing indifference when you see hatred or injustice in your own time. The Holocaust did not begin with camps. It began with words, with small acts of exclusion, with people looking away. And therefore, remembrance asks something of us. It asks us to pay attention, to stand up, to care, and to support Israel, which is the ultimate guarantor of the Jewish people's survival. Tonight, as we light candles and say the names of those we remember, I ask you to think not only of how they died, but of how they lived. To remember them is to honor their humanity. I stand here today because I survived, but survival comes with responsibility, the responsibility to bear witness. And now that responsibility is shared with you. Thank you for listening and thank you for remembering.
Please welcome Cantor Joseph Melovani, who will sing Moishalech, Shaloimelech.
Unter die poilische Grinike Bäumalach spielen sich mehr, nicht kein Moischalach, Schleumalach. Spielen sich mehr, nicht keine Sorelach, Lealach, nicht auf kein Gräselach, nicht auf kein Schneealach. Viele scheine mehr, nicht die jüdische Stimmalach, vorne die תיקון דייסים לך, מותה לך, שימה לך. Mit die zerkrelte, zerdrappete Zorlach, von dem Beweisen von der ihm und Geworlach. Sind die poilische Bäumelach, teut seinen jüdische Heimen und Heimalach, teut seinen Gessalach, choref die Eiselach, wo es verstecken sich Kinder wie Meiselach, jüdische Kinder mit große Eigelach, schwarze, azoi wie mit Heuschech, Verzeugene, Egele volle, mit Pachad verlaufene, und dem umgelegten Bräunem getroffene. Die poilische Grinine Bäumelach spielen sich mehr nicht kein Meuschelach, Schleumalach, spielen sich mehr nicht kein Sorlech, Lealach, nicht auf kein Gräselach, nicht auf kein
And now, please welcome Senator Charles Schumer.
Good afternoon. Every year, I'm so honored to stand here in this beautiful temple in the presence of so many leaders of the Jewish community. I believe deeply that our enduring strength as Jewish people is our solidarity, as well as our interconnectedness with other faith traditions. And I'm heartened to see a wide spectrum of believers in God represented here today. This important event wouldn't have happened without our gracious hosts, two great organizations, the Museum of Jewish Heritage and your president, Jack Klieger, and Temple Emanu-El, led by President Harris Diamond and Senior Rabbi Joshua Davidson. When it comes to the solemn responsibility that brings us all here today, remembering the Shoah, there are two profound challenges that we must deal with. One is that Holocaust survivors, the living witnesses to one of the darkest episodes in human history, are passing away. By some estimates, more than 70% will no longer be with us by 2030, in a few years. Now, I know the Museum of Jewish Heritage does so much incredible work to keep their memory alive, and so do many other institutions around the world. But the harsh reality of human nature is that as events in history recede further and further into the past, the harder it becomes to make them feel relevant to the present generation. Even, or perhaps especially, as an event as cataclysmic as the Holocaust. Many today think it couldn't happen again. More worryingly, so many, it is said that 50% of young people under 35 don't even know about the Holocaust, and some even deny it. They say it never happened. While we, as Jews, look around us at an increasingly hostile world and think, when will it happen again? So the importance of events like this annual remembrance cannot be overstated. We have to bear witness. We have to make the world bear witness. The second challenge, related to the first, is that anti-Semitism is gaining new ground at an alarming rate. We've all seen and read the shocking statistics of hate crimes that have skyrocketed, hate crimes against Jews that have skyrocketed in the last few years. Many of us have experienced this resurgent bigotry ourselves. Anybody who is as skeptical about this explosion of anti-Semitism should just spend a few minutes reading my mentions on social media, such as X, one of the world's most popular and influential media apps that has within its stinking pools of anti-Semitism that serve to perpetuate and spread poisonous ideas against Jews. Similar poisonous cesspools can be found on many other social media sites. And what was once seemed unthinkable after World War II and the Shoah, which had hung over like a curtain over America, it seemed unthinkable that anti-Semitism would find renewed purpose in America in the 21st century. But that has now become our daily routine and reality as Jewish people. As many of you know, I wrote a book addressing these issues. It's called Anti-Semitism in America, A Warning. As the highest-ranking Jewish elected official in American history, I felt a profound responsibility to issue this warning, which is this. History shows time and time again that when anti-Semitism takes hold in society, when it isn't condemned forcefully by a nation's leaders, then wider persecution and suffering for all vulnerable people inevitably follow. As I said at the top of my speech, the Jewish people are strengthened by our connection to other people of other faiths. I believe profoundly, despite what you might read on the social media, there is more that unites us than divides us. Just take a moment to ponder this spiritual season. This is a special time of the year for people of all different faiths. We Jews just finished celebrating Pesach, while last weekend, Catholic and Protestant Christians celebrate Easter. Today, Orthodox Christians are celebrating their own Easter called Pesach. And of course, a few weeks ago, Muslims kicked off this holy season with Eid. What these different holidays and names and dates and traditions obscure is a simple truth, that we all share a universal belief in the divine, a higher power that gives order to our world and our universe, that brings the powerful low and the powerless high, that delivers true relief and justice to those who are suffering. Nothing will ever bring back the 6 million or lessen the terrible legacies of pain and generational trauma caused by their murder. the survivors of the Holocaust continue to live with terrible, terrible memories. But with God be as my witness, I say to you, never again, never again. And as long as Hashem breathes air into my lungs, I will continue to do everything in my power to keep alive the memory of the Holocaust and protect the Jewish people from anti-Semitism. It's going to take every one of us, all of the manpower and solidarity we can muster to beat back this recent evil spike in anti-Semitism. And it's not going to happen overnight. But if we persist, as Jews have during so many other episodes in our history when things look their bleakest, I know we will prevail. In America and in Israel, Am Yisrael Chai, the people Israel live.
Thank you, Senator Schumer. And now I am pleased to introduce the New York City Controller, Mark Levine.
To our beloved survivors and the families, to Rabbi Ehrlich, to Jack and Dan and the whole Museum of Jewish Heritage family, thank you for making this beautiful event happen again this year and for allowing me to be part of it. In 1951, the Israeli Knesset established the 27th of Nisan as the formal Day of Remembrance of the Holocaust. You may be surprised to know that the official name in Hebrew is not simply Yom HaShoah. It is actually Yom HaZikaron LaShoah VeLaGevurah, Holocaust and Heroism Remembrance Day. The date 27th of Nisan was chosen to coincide with the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, when a small band of young Jews, many barely more than teenagers, with almost no weapons, little food, and no hope of victory, rose up against one of the most powerful armies on earth. An act of resistance, an act of defiance, an act of heroism that has echoed through the ages. I know that every one of the survivors here today carries that same spirit within you. You persevered through the horrors of the war, and in the years that followed, you did something just as extraordinary. You rebuilt. You came here to New York City, often with little more than what you could carry, arriving in a place that was unfamiliar but full of possibility. And here, you began again. You built families where families had been torn apart. You built communities where communities had been erased. You helped shape this city, its neighborhoods, its culture, its very spirit, into something stronger, more vibrant, and more compassionate. And you did something profoundly difficult. You told your stories in classrooms, in community centers, in quiet conversations. You returned to the darkest chapters of your lives so that others might learn. We can only imagine how hard that must have been to revisit that pain, to give voice to memories that never fade. But you did it anyway for the sake of future generations. This too is a form of heroism, of gevurah. Those of you who arrived here in the years after the war entered a world that was not free of anti-Semitism. There were barriers, exclusions, quiet and not so quiet forms of prejudice in America of that era. Over time, many of those barriers fell. New York, especially, became a place where Jewish life did not just survive, it flourished. A place where Jewish families could live openly and proudly. You helped create one of the largest, most vibrant, most diverse Jewish communities that the world has ever known. So I can only imagine how painful it must be to see the reemergence now of dark, fat forces that you have battled before. As anti-Semitic crimes rise, as language we thought banished begins to return so brazenly and openly. For those like you who have seen where hatred can lead, that carries an awful weight. Indeed, it is painful for all of us. And yet, even now, we draw strength from you, from your example, your courage, your defiance. You showed the world that even when the odds seem overwhelming, we are not powerless, that we can stand up, hold fast to our values, gain wisdom from our sages, draw on our deepest traditions, and choose dignity over fear, hope over despair. Because of you, we know what resilience looks like. That is the meaning of this day. Not only remembrance, but resolve. Not only mourning, but moral courage. Not only Shoah, but Givua. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And now I am pleased to welcome Manhattan Borough President Brad Hoylman Siegel for some remarks.
Good afternoon. I'm Brad Hoylman Siegel on behalf of 1.6 million Manhattanites. It's truly an honor to be here. Thank you, Rabbi Ehrlich and Davidson, CEO Jack Kleiger, Chairman Dan Loeb, and my amazing colleagues, including the first Jewish speaker of the New York City Council, Julie Menon. I wanted to thank the Museum of Jewish Heritage for bringing us together, and to Temple Emanu-El for offering this beautiful sanctuary. As we join together for the annual Gathering of Remembrance, we honor the 6 million Jews murdered in the Holocaust, along with the millions of others targeted by the Nazi regime. We will never forget. We must continue to share the stories of the Holocaust and its victims, especially at a moment when fewer and fewer survivors are able to bear witness themselves. With each passing year, the responsibility is passed more fully to all of us. Memory must be actively preserved, protected, and carried forward. 93 years ago, the Nazis established Dachau, where the first Jews were interned. 81 years ago, the last concentration camp was liberated. And yet, nearly a century later, the trauma of what people endured in the camps, on the streets of Europe, and in their own homes remain. It lives not only in history books, but in families, in communities, and across generations. The wound did not end in 1945. It echoes clearly still. But even in the darkest moments, there were acts of extraordinary humanity, from those who arranged the kinder transport, to those who hid the persecuted from the Nazis, to prisoners who looked out for one another in the camps. In that spirit of care and connection that we must carry forward as we support survivors, keep their memories alive, and ensure that this horrific history is never forgotten or repeated. Thank you to every survivor here who has shared your story, and for all of you who share all the survivors' stories who have since passed. You keep their memories alive, and you remind us of the tragedy that occurs when we do not stand up to persecution. In these extremely challenging times, we must understand the devastating consequences of unchecked hatred, silence, and indifference. And we must not only remember, but act, to stand up, to speak out, and to bring light where there is darkness. My own rabbi often instructs our congregation Bet Simcha Torah, the LGBTQ synagogue, that one of the most effective ways to counter anti-Semitism is, simply put, to be more Jewish. On this day of remembrance, may we recommit to the promise of never again. Every day, may we remember and may we ensure never again. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. And now I am pleased to welcome the Speaker of the New York City City Council, Julie Menon.
It's an honor to be here once again with you all. I first of all want to thank the Museum of Jewish Heritage, and I want to thank Jack Klieger and the new chair, Dan Loeb, for all of your leadership in bringing us together. And to everyone at Temple Emanu-El, thank you so much for putting this event on once again. And thank you to my colleagues in government who are here. I was here last year as a city council member representing the East Side. I'm now back here as the first Jewish city council speaker, and it's a tremendous honor to be able to say that. I'm also the daughter of a Holocaust survivor. My mother and grandmother survived the Holocaust in Budapest. They hid in a cellar for over a year. They didn't know which meal would be their last. They didn't know which day would be their last, but by a miracle, they survived. My grandfather did not. He was one of the 6 million Jews who was murdered just because he was born Jewish. And as I was coming over here today, I thought about, well, last year when we were here, and we honored and we talked about the memories of those that were lost. Here we are now a year later with anti-Semitism surging in this city. Just 2 months ago, I went to Gravesend to Brooklyn to visit a playground where 73 swastikas have been spray painted onto children's equipment in the playground. Right now, anti-Semitic incidents are 53% of all hate crimes in New York City, yet the Jewish population, we represent about 10% of the population in New York. We have to do more. But let me tell you what we are doing, because as we are honoring this Day of Remembrance, I think fighting anti-Semitism is one of the most important things we can do. About 2 years ago, I read an article that said that 34% of young people in New York City believe the Holocaust is a myth or exaggerated, 34%. So I'm proud to have launched a partnership with the museum where we are bringing every 8th grade public school student in New York City to the Holocaust exhibition at the Museum of Jewish Heritage so they can see firsthand and learn about the Holocaust. Education is truly the antidote to hate. In addition, I'm very proud of the fact that last month the City Council passed my package of bills to fight anti-Semitism, including 2 bills which create buffer zones around synagogues and every single house of worship. This is not an issue about the First Amendment right to peacefully protest. That, of course, is sacrosanct. But what is not sacrosanct is the ability of congregants to enter and exit their house of worship without fear, without intimidation, without threats, without injury, so that what happened at Park East Synagogue, not that far from here, never happens again. In addition, we passed a buffer zone bill that protects all schools and that once again does not in any way inhibit the right to peacefully protest, but what it does do is say that students have the right to be able to freely enter and exit their classroom without fear of intimidation and harassment. These are the efforts we need to take, unfortunately, at this very, very difficult time. But I know and I am hopeful that collectively, by speaking out against anti-Semitism, by holding events like we are today that honor the memories of those that were killed in the Holocaust, that is how we will prevail at this very difficult time. Thank you.
We will now hear Ani Ma'amin, performed by Elliot Roman on the piano, and Tamar Sagiv on cello.
Thank you. And now I am pleased to welcome Congressman Dan Goldman of New York.
Thank you. It's my honor to once again be here with everyone at Temple Emanu-El for this very important annual gathering. I'm deeply grateful to the Museum of Jewish Heritage for continuing to preserve the memory of the 6 million lost in the Holocaust, and to the survivors, descendants, and families carry on the legacy of those who are lost. So thank you, Jack, Dan, the other board members, and the staff of the museum. This event has never been more important than this year. The alarming rise in anti-Semitism around the world has made it painfully clear that the words "never forget" have lost their resonance, and far too many have forgotten the horrors of the Holocaust, or worse yet, are outright denying it. 54% of men in the Republican Party under 50 meet the definition of Holocaust denial, according to a 2025 Manhattan Institute poll. There's even a congressional candidate in Texas who is proudly bragging about owning an original copy of Mein Kampf. But this is not a partisan issue. As we have seen right here in New York City, anti-Semitism has dramatically increased from the extreme left. As Speaker Menon said last year, the majority of all hate crimes in New York City were anti-Semitic in nature. And sadly, some of it comes from people of our own faith. But we must always remember one lesson from the Holocaust and October 7th, that those who seek to erase and eliminate Jews do not care about their politics. The Holocaust teaches that silence enables hatred, and leadership matters most when it is most difficult. The Jewish values of Tikkun Olam have motivated me to choose a career in public service, to believe and act that what our faith teaches us, which is to give back and make this world better than we found it. In Congress, I have approached anti-Semitism not as a partisan issue, but as a fundamental threat to American society and democracy. As we all know too well, hate against one quickly becomes hate against all. As co-chair of the Bipartisan Anti-Semitism Task Force, I have worked to bring together law enforcement, community leaders, and elected officials to respond to rising threats of anti-Semitism wherever they are found. I've worked to strengthen the protections for Jewish students on college campuses, including pushing institutions to enforce federal law prohibiting anti-Semitism, such as at Columbia University. And I've worked to ensure that Jewish organizations and houses of worship have access to the growing need for security resources by working to expand the nonprofit security grant program. But we all of us here, have a responsibility to educate the next generation of Americans about the atrocities that were inflicted upon Jewish people during the Holocaust. We have an obligation to reach out to others, as frustrating as it may be sometimes, to educate them about Zionism and Israel's founding. Zionism, to me, and I imagine many of you in this room, simply means the belief that there should be a Jewish state in our ancestral homeland. But importantly, it does not mean that that state should exist to the exclusion of any other state. As we all know, Israel was finally created in the aftermath of the Holocaust, the worst genocide in history, and yet after it, Jews were not allowed back into many countries, including here in the United States. The impetus for our asylum laws was the rejection of Jews after the Holocaust. And Israel, of course, remains the only Jewish state in the world as compared to 25 Muslim states. While many of us, including me, strongly oppose this Israeli government and many of its actions and policies over the past several years, their government is not synonymous with the state of Israel, just like the United States is not synonymous with Donald Trump. And like us, Israel will have a democratic election in the fall where their people will render a verdict on their leadership. I would certainly like to train my sole focus on that election, but unfortunately I first must win my own difficult primary re-election this June, in which Israel is a central issue. And it's not surprising that I've received numerous anti-Semitic threats and slurs, just like Senator Schumer. I'm proud to run on my record, which includes strong opposition to this Israeli government and strong support for Israel's survival and for Palestinian self-determination. And as the state of Israel comes under attack from new and different places, the lessons of the Shoah are more important than ever. Because in order to forget something, you must first know it. So it is our duty, all of us here, to ensure that we share the heartbreaking and powerful stories of the survivors here today and those who carry those stories forward from their loved ones. Because when we say never forget, it must truly mean never forget. Thank you.
Please welcome Elan Weiberger, third-generation survivor.
Good afternoon. Opportunity is not a lengthy visitor. This line, written by Stephen Sondheim for his famous Broadway musical Into the Woods, does not normally bring one of humanity's greatest tragedies to mind. But as a third generation of Holocaust survivors, this line perfectly describes my grandfather's story of survival. My grandfather, Sam Weinberger, was born in 1916 in Jasło, Poland, as one of 5 children to a religious family. In August of 1939, he was working as an electrician in the oil fields of eastern Poland when his supervisor pulled him aside and gave him a warning that would change his life forever. He told my grandfather that a Nazi invasion was imminent, and any Jew that remained would likely not survive. The window to escape was closing, he said, as he left my grandfather with just one instruction: run. My grandfather begged his family to flee with him, but they refused, believing that it was only the German Jews that would face persecution. So he left without them and fled east toward the Russian border, eventually settling in Sambor, a small town about 80 miles east. Within weeks, Poland was invaded by the Nazis from the west and the Soviets from the east. Jasło fell under Nazi control, and Sambor fell under Soviet control. My grandfather's decision to leave saved his life because he recognized that opportunity is not a lengthy visitor, and it is certainly not a passive one. Had my grandfather stayed in Jasło, he likely would have met the same fate as the rest of his family, none of whom survived. In 1941, the Nazis took control of Sambor during their invasion of the Soviet Union, and my grandfather, along with thousands of others, was forced into a ghetto where stars were mandatory, starvation was rampant, and executions became part of everyday life. Over the following year, the ghetto population shrank as Jews were deported to different parts of the Nazi death machine. By January 1943, new guards appeared throughout the ghetto, wearing a patch bearing a skull and crossbones. My grandfather knew that these were not normal SS officers or soldiers. These were death squads, the grim harbingers of death, that the windows of survival was finally closing shut. Desperate, my grandfather searched for a way out. And then, in the most ordinary of moments, he found one. He came across a mural being covered by a painter that was hired by the Nazis. And in that ordinary moment, he saw his opportunity. When the painter stepped away for lunch, my grandfather acted, and he took the painter's smock, ladder, and his painting supplies and walked straight to the nearest gate. My grandfather spoke just enough German to convince the guards that he was the painter that the Nazis had hired that morning. He walked right out of the ghetto and immediately went into hiding. A few days later, the death squads removed the remaining Jews from that ghetto and shot them into mass graves on the outskirts of town. My grandfather understood that opportunity is not a lengthy visitor. He recognized that he had a brief moment to act, and the cost of hesitation can be the ultimate price. He seized a fleeting moment, and he acted despite the risk, despite the fear, and despite the unimaginable consequences of failure. And that decision is why I am here standing before you today. Today, we honor the millions who were murdered at the hands of the Nazi regime, but we also carry forward the stories of those who survived to understand what is required of us in this very moment. That we must continue the fight against anti-Semitism before it's too late. My grandfather's story reminds us that we must act with a sense of urgency to stand up against hate, bigotry, and injustice. For opportunity is not a lengthy visitor, but when it arrives, we must be ready to act. Thank you.
Please welcome Seth Weisletter, third-generation survivor.
As we come to the most solemn and poignant moment of our ceremony, the lighting of the candles, I invite each of you to take a moment to truly reflect, to remember, and to learn as you watch and listen. I stand before you with a deep sense of honor and responsibility. For the past 35 years plus, it has meant so much to be part of this program and help ensure that the memories of those lost are never forgotten. This moment is personal for me, and I thank Alon for sharing his message. I am also a third-generation survivor, carrying the legacy of my grandparents of blessed memory, Saul Weisletter, Doris, and Felix Ehrman. Their individual stories, like so many others, remind us why we gather, why we remember, and why we must come to share. Each name represents a life, a story, a legacy that will always be with all of us. It is especially meaningful today that these candles are lit by Holocaust survivors, members of the Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial to the Holocaust Speakers Bureau. Throughout the year, they share their stories of survival with students and adult audiences, ensuring that the memory is preserved and passed on to future generations. It is now my honor to invite Dr. Henry Earl to light our first candle. Dr. Earl was born in 1929 to Richard and Jane Earl of Nuremberg, Germany. After his grandfather was murdered in Kristallnacht, Henry's family fled Germany, immigrating to the United States via London, and eventually settling in Washington Heights. Dr. Earl attended Stuyvesant High School and Cornell Medical College, building a long career as a top Manhattan gastroenterologist and internist. Arthur Spielman was born in Poland in 1928 and grew up in Krakow. His family entered the ghetto to remain together. His grandparents were later murdered in early deportations. After surviving and hiding under false papers, he was liberated in 1944 and immigrated to the United States in 1949. Dory Katz. Dory Katz was born in Antwerp just before the German invasion of Belgium in 1940. She and her mother survived separately in hiding, while her father and extended family were deported to Auschwitz concentration camp. Today, she shares her story, reflecting on trauma, resilience, and memory across the generations. Lisa Bayer. Lisa Bayer was born in Frankfurt, Germany in 1926 and experienced Kristallnacht when Nazis ransacked her home. Lisa's mother secured their escape and the family fled to the United States in 1940. Lisa built a new life in New York as a dressmaker and a teacher. Flora Hogman. Flora Hogman is a Holocaust survivor who lived in hiding as a child in Nazi-occupied France, while her mother was deported to Auschwitz concentration camp. Sharing her story has helped her reclaim her childhood and restore her sense of identity. Anne Kellerman. Anne Kellerman was born in Vienna, Austria on February 3, 1925, to Czech and Hungarian Jewish parents. In 1939, Anne became one of the thousands of children rescued by the Kindertransport. After the war, Anne later worked on the kibbutz, is now what became Israel, then moved to the United States and became a citizen in 1950.
Thank you, Seth, and thank you to all the memorial candlelighters. And now, please welcome the Commissioner for the New York State Division of Human Rights, Denise M. Miranda.
Good afternoon. Thank you to the Museum of Jewish Heritage for bringing us together, and to Temple Emanu-El for hosting this sacred observance. I am honored to be here on behalf of Governor Kathy Hochul. Today, I stand before you as the Commissioner of the New York State Division of Human Rights, but also as a fellow New Yorker. We live in a city that holds a profound and solemn distinction. We are home to one of the largest populations of Holocaust survivors anywhere in the world. To the survivors here today, you are the living conscience of our city. You have carried memory, tradition, and hope over great distances and many generations. You have preserved what others tried to destroy. And your presence here today and in our communities is a gift. In my work, I'm often reminded that human rights are not just an abstract legal concept. It is the thin line between a society that protects human dignity and one that allows for it to be stripped away. A couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to travel to Italy, and I spent time exploring the ancient Jewish quarters of Rome and Venice. Time and again, I found stumbling stones underfoot. Brass-plated cobblestones marking the places where Jewish residents were torn from their homes during the Holocaust. In Italy, these plates are engraved with Qui abitava, meaning here lived, followed by the name, birth date, and deportation or death date of the Jewish person who once made their home there. I found myself standing where someone once lived their life. I knew their name. I could look around and see what they saw, including the homes from which they were forcibly removed. It was a powerful reminder of the individual story behind the millions of lives that were lost. And it was a reminder that hatred and dehumanization begin with the quiet erosion of dignity in the neighborhoods we call home. Too often we speak of the Holocaust as if it were ancient history, a black and white chapter in a textbook. But the Holocaust ended only 81 years ago. 81 years is not long ago. It is the span of a single human life. It is a distance so short we can still reach out and touch the hands of those who witnessed it. And that is a stark reminder that the rise in anti-Semitism today poses a profound and immediate danger, and it demands an equally urgent response. Throughout her time in office, Governor Hochul has been unequivocal in her commitment of supporting and protecting our Jewish neighbors and fighting the global scourge of anti-Semitism. The governor has delivered over $130 million in security funding for sites like synagogues and community centers that are at risk of hate crimes because of their beliefs. And this year, she's pushing for another $35 million in community grants and $90 million for security improvements at religious schools around the entire state. Earlier this year, the governor also proposed legislation to create buffer zones around houses of worship that would prohibit the harassment of anyone trying to enter, because everyone deserves to be safe when they enter and gather in a synagogue like we are today. And Governor Hochul has also directed millions of dollars in funding to support Holocaust survivors living in New York State, providing key services like health care and benefits access, financial assistance, home care, and more. I am extremely proud of our state's steadfast commitment to the Jewish community. And as New York's Human Rights Commissioner, my duty is to ensure that the laws of our state protect every individual from discrimination, hate, and bias. But I know that laws alone are not enough. Here in New York, we have a unique responsibility to be the loudest voices against anti-Semitism. We must ensure that the phrase "never again" isn't just a promise we make to the past, but a mandate we apply to the present. That is my commitment at the Division of Human Rights. And so in closing, may the memories of the millions lost in the Holocaust be a blessing. Let us remember their stories and carry them forward for future generations. Let us honor the Jewish life that continues to enrich all of our communities. And let us resolve to work together to ensure New York remains a place where every Jewish person, every New Yorker feels valued and protected. Thank you.
Please welcome Cantor Joseph Melovani, who will chant El Machet Malai Rakamim. Lyrics are in your program.
Kindly rise. Hail, Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bameromim, Hamtzei Menucha Nechoena, Kanfei השכינה. במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזויה הרקיע, מהירים ומזהירים, לנשמוס שישה מיליוני אחינו ויחיוסנו, אנשים, נשים וטף, שנהרגו ושנשחטו ושנחנקו ושנשרפו ושנקברו חיים על קידוש השם. במחנות ההשמדה אושוויץ, בירקנאו, טרבלינקה, מיידנק, בוכלוולד, מנטהאוזן, ברגן-בלזן, דאכאו, גטו ורשה, גטו וילנה ומקומות אחרים באירופה, אוסטריה, פולניה, רומניה, אוקראינה, לטביה, ליטא, אסטוניה, הולנד, צ'כוסלובקיה, צרפת, הולנד, בלגיה ועל מקומות אחרים. בידי הסוררים הנאצים והגרמנים ועוזריהם יימח שמם וזכרם. ושיהלכו ליואל עמם בעבור שכל הקהל הזה וכל עם ישראל מתפללים לעילוי נשמותיהם בגן עדן תהווה מנוחתם. לכן בעל הרחמים יסירם בסייסר כנפיו ליום בצרור החיים, אעשה נשמותיהם אדוני, ונחלתם, ויקומו לקץ הימים לך יסם ונאמר
Please welcome Holocaust survivor Arthur Spielman, who will lead us through the mourner's Kaddish.
Iskadal v'Iskadash my Rabbo. V'yolmo d'Baruch Risai v'Yamlich Malchisai v'Hayaychoyre v'Yamaychoyre v'Chayed Chalbais Yisrael v'Agurus Vankure v'Imri Yumayin. Yehai Shmai Rabbo Mavurach le'ulam elomay olmayu. Yispurach v'Yishtabach v'Yispua v'Yisrael v'Yisnasai v'Yisadov v'Yisalei v'Yisalol Shemai d'Kitchu Berichi. Li'aylam in kol b'chusu v'shivusu, tishbechusu v'nechamosu, da'amirom b'yolmu v'imri yumayin, Yehai shlomo v'abba min shemayu, v'chayim olayni v'al kol Yisrael v'imri yumayin. Oisei shulam imroimov, hi yasei shulam, olayni v'al kol Yisrael v'imri yumayin.
Thank you, Cantor Malavani and Arthur. And now the Hazamir International Teen Choir, accompanied by Elliot Roman, will perform Won't Be Silent, a song written by my uncle, Wolf Termashkin. While held in the Vilna ghetto, Wolf co-founded the Ghetto Orchestra, as well as a music school and a 100-voice choir. He was later transferred into forced labor at the Kluge concentration camp, and it was there that he wrote Won't Be Silent, originally titled Lomer Schweigen, or Stay Silent, as a necessary mantra for survival and resistance. Tragically, he was killed just a few hours before the liberation of the camp, and his music was lost for decades until its rediscovery in 2017 in Israel. Afterwards, we ask that you rise for a moment of silence and join Cantor Malavani while he sings a partisan song. Again, the program QR code has the lyrics.
stands between us and the world we dream to know. We'll break the silence, screaming words of hope. We won't be silent, won't be silent. We'll break the silence, screaming words of hope. We won't be silent, won't be silent. We'll break the silence, screaming words of hope. Zo niet eenmaal als du gehst den letzten Weg, Gott in den Breien verstehen neue Tag. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Show, es wird erbeugt und unser Tod wir seinen Lob. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Show, es wird erbeugt und unser Tod wir seinen Lob. Von grünen Palmen Land ist weit im Land zu stehen. Wir nehmen mit unser Freund, mit unser Weg. Wo wir bauen, sie so spitz von unser Blut. Stolzen weg durch unser Blut und unser Mut. Wo wir bauen, sie so spitz von unser Blut. Stolzen weg durch unser Blut und unser Mut.
Sie sind geschrieben mit im Blut und nicht mit Blei. Sie ist nicht kein Liedl von a Vogel auf der Frei. Das hat apostolischen Fall nicht gesehen. Das Lied gesungen mit na Gannes in die Welt. Das hat apostolischen Fall nicht gewählt. Das Lied gesungen mit na Gannes in die Welt. Das hat die Welt und der Tod. Und der Nächten wird verschwinden mit dem Feind. Nur läuft zusammen wird die Sonne in dem Kajol. Wie a Parol, so geht so dies, so dann, so dort. Nur ist was Sonne in dem Gold. Wie a Parol, so geht das Lied von so zu dort.
So nicht einmal als
Die größte letzte Weg, Gott himlen bleien, verstehen bleue Tag. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Show. Es wird erbeugt und unser Tod wir seinen doch. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Show. Es wird erbeugt und unser Tod in seinen doch.
This marks the end of our commemoration. We invite you to visit the Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial to the Holocaust in Battery Park City, where we honor the legacy of survivors every day. Please stay safe, and thank you for joining us today. Another, yeah, you're the best. How's Beatrice?
Okay, except Denise.
Oh, you're kidding. That's a big eye. Oh, you're kidding. Send my regards.
I know that she's great.
Right.
But it's difficult. She has two of them.
Aye. So maybe she needs surgery for her knee.